Hello, I'm Kathy Peterson, a volunteer with the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. You're watching Business Connection, a production of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is committed to finding business solutions by collaborating with regional business leaders on key issues. And we have a very exciting program for you today on a topic that really we're all talking about. Our guests today are Barry James, President and CEO of James Investment Research, and Jason Antonick, Manager of Economic Development for the Dayton Chamber. And our topic today is the economy and how it's going to look in the future. According to the national media, the economy is improving. And in your opinion, did the national economy fare as well as maybe we thought, or maybe what the media was telling us?
Well, I think the media is kind of like what economists and what Will Rogers said about them. He said that an economist's guess is likely to be as right as anyone else's. So I would put that in that category. No, we didn't really see a lot of improvement. I kind of use a demarcation of 2% growth. You can hear all these numbers, but if the economic growth isn't over 2%, it's going to feel like a recession. And that's what we've had. Now, admittedly, the last quarter was a little bit stronger than that, but we've just been creeping along, and it really hasn't been anywhere near what we would want to see in terms of an economic recovery. And a couple of ways that I see that playing across the field is that businesses are really kind of lacking an understanding of where the economy is going to go based on where taxes are going to go, based on where regulations are going to go, based on where health care is going. So they're sitting on lots and lots and lots of money today, and that's kind of kept them back from spending in ways that we would like to see to really kick the economy forward.
And I know we're seeing, some areas of improvement, like,
Right.
small growth in the sales tax revenue and things like that. But, you hate to bank all of it on that because it's still so soon in the
Right.
recovery, I guess, is what
Right.
we're talking about. Now, what's the difference between consumer confidence and business confidence, and how would you characterize both of those now?
Well, when you look at consumer confidence, it really is what affects the average person out there, what they're thinking. And it's been very, very low since 2008. Now, it has been improving, but it's still at extremely low levels. And it's important when we look at consumer confidence because it tends to foretell what they're going to be doing out in terms of spending, in terms of borrowing, in terms of going out and buying new cars or new homes and things of that nature. So the fact that it's been so low, I think, is representative of a conservativeness that people have seen with their home prices having dropped. And so they have pulled back, and we've seen a tremendous drawdown in debt. It's amazing to see hundreds of billions of dollars across the country. People have cut their debt. They've cut their debt, businesses have cut their debt, but the federal government hasn't cut debt. But that's one side. So that really gives businesses some idea, are they going to be selling more? And on the business side, when you look at confidence levels there, they're low as well, very low. And what they're trying to foretell is, should we be expanding our business? Should we be hiring more people? Should we be building? Should we be buying another business at this point in time? Should we be spending the trillions of dollars that they're sitting on in terms of cash? And they don't have that confidence, as I mentioned, because they don't know what's going to happen with taxes. They don't know what's going to happen necessarily with regulatory environment and the like. And they do know that the new health care law is coming into effect. And my little company, I heard that this next year, 2013, my rates were going to go up 50 to 75% just to comply with these new health care laws. So that has a lot of businesses trying to retrench and figure out what they're going to do with personnel and obviously health costs.
There are so many factors for any business or individual to consider
Right.
When you're talking about the economy. You touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the national economic trends that we're seeing right now?
Right. Well, there's a couple of big trends. One trend that I did mention is that companies aren't expanding right now. They're sitting on their cash. They're either paying dividends early, trying to avoid the tax hikes next year, or they're buying back shares, or they're just sitting on their cash, which is not what we want to see with business. We want to see business, with a good, healthy spending pattern. A couple of things that we see that are positive that maybe will even pour over here into the Dayton area. Number one is housing. We've seen home prices are up about 3% nationally over the last year, which is a turnaround because they were off over a third nationally. So that is a positive trend. We're seeing that in terms of traffic. The best thing to really foretell future changes in prices is to look at the number of people looking at homes. It's called traffic figure. And that is now at a level that would tend to foretell future increases in home prices. And sales are hitting new levels that they haven't seen for quite some time. So both of those things are crucial to our economy. At one time, it was probably about 1/6 of our economy, because you buy a home, you're buying furniture, you're buying carpet, so on and so on and so on, and the ripple effect. And they said that, you know, every home was probably like 6 new permanent jobs for the economy. So to see both of those picking up is a huge positive trend, and we think it's already creeping into the Dayton area. Another trend we think that will probably have some impact in the Dayton area is the automobile industry. We're seeing sales are rising. They're hitting new highs, the numbers that were just released yesterday, in fact. So that's very important, and we look at what could happen. Could that continue, or should it? And the answer is yes, because the average length of time a car is on the road right now is 11 years. So when you get that long, people need new cars. So we think that that is another good trend for both automobile manufacturers and those that supply parts. So those are two big trends. Another trend that maybe not quite as good is the fact that we have a lot of trouble around the globe. We have recessions in Japan, and recessions in Europe, and those are two of our major trading partners that we ship exports to. And if we look at the troubles we've experienced in the economy for the last several years, the saving grace has been exports. They've been rising at about a 9% clip. Now they've about gone flat. So if we don't have that growth in exports, which is very important to our manufacturing sector, that is going to tend to be a drag on the economy.
Now, you mentioned a couple of the factors that may affect the Dayton region.
Right.
Are there other trends that maybe are happening now or that you expect to influence here?
I do. You know, the government spending isn't the be-all and end-all, but we're seeing a slowdown in government spending in technology and in defense. And we know from the proposed sequestration, where they're going to cut in the next year $50 billion alone from defense spending, that in the Dayton area is crucial. The friends that I have out at the base that are maybe overseeing some of the programs, they can't hire anybody. If somebody leaves, they can't replace them, and they don't know what's going to happen to the program that they're overseeing. So that, again, hurts overall, confidence, and obviously a lot of the contractors don't know what's going to be happening with them either.
Yes, uncertainty. What aspects of the economy really excite you right now?
Well, number one, as I mentioned, is housing and automotive. But the other one that I didn't mention is the financial field. And we've got a fairly decent representation here in the Dayton area. But when you think about financial companies, their earnings, if you took them out of the stock market, you would have earnings were falling for all the rest of the companies combined. So the financial field has a real key advantage. They can borrow money for very, very little cost. You know, the Federal Reserve has, very short-term interest rates are very, very low, but then they can lend that money out for more than that. So they're making the difference. It's called a net margin interest that they're making, net interest margin. And so they're just about printing money thanks to what the Federal Reserve has done. So the financial sector looks pretty exciting to us right now, and we think that there's some good advantages for even some of our regional banks that are right here in the Dayton area.
That is good news. You touched on them a little bit. What are your big concerns with the economy?
Well, regulation is something that is overhanging. If you look at surveys of small business, number one, they want more business coming in the door. That's every business person would say that. But they also talk about regulations and taxes. We have here in the States the highest tax level on business of any industrialized nation. It used to be Japan, but they just cut the rates for businesses. So we have the highest taxes, and that pushes business overseas in a sense. So that's not particularly good. But the regulatory environment is staggering here. We have, I think, over 169,000 pages of regulations in the country. And the cost, I think either the Small Business Administration or another group found that it's about $1.8 trillion a year. Now, if you take our defense budget, it's 3 times our defense budget is just to comply. That's not a cent in taxes. That's just for compliance purposes. And it drives business out. I've heard today, a farmer in Greene County growing vegetables. The regulations became so onerous for the migrant workers, he's just growing wheat and corn. So all those people don't have jobs anymore. And we don't have vegetables, and vegetables are being grown in places that maybe aren't as cautious about what they do. So the regulatory environment is a major burden, and that will continue to weigh on I think on businesses and the economy. And then the worldwide slowdown is also something that's going to continue to hit us. And you know, in this area, I have friends in manufacturing, and they've been exporting as fast as they can build, and they're seeing that slow down. So that's a trend that I think is of concern.
All right, great. Now, Jason, as Manager for Economic Development for the Chamber, is the economy improving here in the Dayton region?
I feel like it is. There are a lot of things in place to make that happen. We're going down that right path. There are a lot of initiatives. I like the infrastructure improvements. There's a $700 million infrastructure improvement in the highway with 75 and 70. And that's a really big deal, getting rid of that malfunction junction with Route 4. There's a lot of revitalization going on with Dayton communities, a lot of do-it-yourself type of attitude. And I think that it starts small, and if all these small areas do their part, then collectively we're going to get on the right track. So I'm talking about the neighborhoods like the Huffman Historic District or St. Anne's Hill or Oregon District, and then on the west side, Wright Dunbar area, and the homes around what's the hospital? Good Sam over there by Catalpa. So there's a big improvement in those areas, and then there are programs to invite businesses to relocate here or prosper here. You know, what can we do to abate your income taxes? How can we help you so that you're like, yeah, I want to come to Dayton. So there's a lot of good things going on. I feel like we've bottomed out, and we're kind of on our way up. You know, I don't know how far we are up, but we're the little train that could.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And it seems that every industry, you know, is affected in different ways by the economy. What industries within our region are experiencing or will experience the greatest upside economically in the coming years?
I think it's something that Barry talked about a little bit, what's going on out of Wright Pat. The aerospace and the defense industry is really our biggest spot right now, as far as I'm concerned. You know, cyber intelligence, IT sensors, IT systems, UAS, unmanned aerial systems. It's a really big push for Southwest Ohio and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in that area. There are a couple companies, United Technologies, Honeywell, et cetera. They're working with Airbus and Boeing, and so they're working on not just defense-related aerospace, but aerospace system, if you will. And that's neat that it's not just tied to defense. That's something you talked about a second ago that I read yesterday, is that it's my understanding that 40% of the Air Force's budget is coming through Wright Pat. And so we're talking about billions and billions, like Carl Sagan, billions and right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a lot of money here, you know. And so even if there's a reduction, 20% across with the sequestration, or you know, who knows what's going to happen with that, that won't be good. But at the same time, there's so much coming through. I think that's really important. Yeah.
And Barry touched on it. You know, some of the industries that might have a more difficult time. What are your thoughts on that?
Manufacturing. Yeah. Hard hit with GM and what happened with all that. But that being said, manufacturing is not dead. It's still vital in this town. We have 2,500 manufacturers in town, over 100,000 employees. That's a big deal. We're constantly coming out with new patents, and it's neat. It's good to see what's going on with legislators, with manufacturers, the owners of the companies, with local leaders, and the CTCs, the Career Technology Centers, higher education, trying to make manufacturing hip again to the younger audience. And I think that's neat because it's vital. You know, manufacturing has come up with, and they're coming up with, ways to streamline, to save money, to improve their whole setup, and we need to have workers to work those jobs.
We sure do, and that really leads into my next question. We hear about people who choose to leave Ohio, and since the recession, how many people have left the Dayton region, and how has this affected our local economy?
Well, when I first took this job, one of the first tasks I had was a research question, and the question was, we've lost more than 1,200 employers, 1,200 jobs, and thousands of employees between 2000 and 2011. Is that right or wrong, Jason? Let me know. Okay, so I went to work on the internet, and it determined that it was over 1,600 employers, and yes, thousands of jobs. So that being said, times are tougher. Labor market is tight. It's harder to get a job, but I think that Daytonians were resourceful. This is the home of innovation, and we come up with ways to make it work and improve. But that is a challenge. Yeah.
But as you mentioned earlier, we have so much technology here, and that is definitely a positive when you think about drawing in talent from the outside. So that's something I think we're all optimistic about.
Right.
You also mentioned the government, and specifically Wright-Patterson are now the largest employers in Dayton. While there are many benefits to this installation, are we now over-reliant on the base? And does this leave us susceptible to a government strategy, whatever that may be?
Well, have to diversify, right?
That's right.
Isn't that the key word?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you don't want to be into any one sector too much, but I think that healthcare is really big in Dayton, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and manufacturing is still viable. But of course, Wright-Pat, and we have to be so thankful for what happened with Wright-Pat, with the BRAC, base realignment and closure. Many bases closed, and others were realigned to Wright-Patterson, and we're so thankful that that happened here. And so it's great. And it's kind of like what happened with GM, right? GM was the mother company, and then there were Delphi, and there were all these other companies that built all the widgets and wheels and belts and dashboards and all these different things, and then they'd supply GM, right? So they had that symbiotic relationship. Well, then that died. And so now that's kind of happening with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right? So there are the companies that I mentioned earlier. They're kind of working together to come up with these government contracts, et cetera. And that's a really good thing. What I really like, what's really neat, in my opinion, there's something going on with government, industry, and higher education in this town. And that is happening very close to UD on Stewart and Patterson, I believe, at the GE Epicenter. So the government has this need of aerospace and defense, right? So there's this big need. And then you have UD and GE, and they've kind of all partnered together in a sense, specifically UD and GE, to create this GE R&D Center, Research and Development Center, the Epicenter, which is going to open in, I think, spring of 2013. Beautiful. You can see it coming down 48. I look over and see it, and when you're coming from UD Arena, it's just so nice to see this brand spanking new facility right here in Dayton.
Yes.
So I really like that.
Very, very exciting. And this is a question for both of you. What do you think the Dayton area will look like in the next 10 years, say 10 years from now?
Well, I think healthcare will continue to grow. Of course, what's happening now with Wright-Pat, with this whole aerospace defense, UAV, Southwestern Ohio, I think is really going to be big into UAV, UAS, unmanned aerial systems technology, manufacturing, innovation.
Yes.
I see a couple of big trends. The state of Ohio, and our area was really noted as being the lowest cost of living. And I had hired a guy who had lived up in Boston, lived in a small apartment with his wife, and now they own a house on a golf course for the same income. So that tells you that the cost of living here is very, very good. And the state of Ohio has done good things. It didn't raise its taxes. It had tax cuts, continue to go through. It's streamlining regulation. I see Ohio and Dayton rising on a tide of the Midwest. Now, we've got two super important things in Ohio. We've got water. They don't have that out west.
Yes.
And we now have energy. And it's just beginning. Now, you spent time in the Dakotas, and in North Dakota, their unemployment rate's 3.5%. Well, it's actually less than 3% now, I think, actually. And you can work, I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but a job at McDonald's pays $25 an hour because everybody else is out in the oil fields. So this movement of energy, we're going to have it right here and water as well. So it's going to be great for manufacturing, going to have low prices, and that is really good. And another major trend that I see that you know, is kind of this whole business community, and the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce has come together on this, and that's the Learn to Earn program. And to take charge where we're all coming together to improve the education of the children, because that's, we all know that's the future, but if they don't have a job, and the whole economy is going, about 60% of the jobs will be requiring an advanced degree of some sort. So we've got to get them ready, and that goes all the way back to birth, basically, to 5 years old, getting them ready to go to school and then being at reading level by 3rd grade. And those initiatives are coming in place, and I think we're going to see the benefits in 10 years. I expect a real strong revival of Ohio and of Dayton itself. I'm very, very hopeful.
Absolutely. I love to hear you talk about Learn to Earn, especially as a business leader,
Oh, yeah.
because it is all of us involved in an initiative like that.
Exactly.
So I do love to hear that. Do you feel the federal government has taken the appropriate steps and has the national economy turned the corner? You know, looking back over, you know, what we've experienced with the recession.
Well, I want to say yes. We're not still in technical recession, so there was some benefit. But, you know, we go back, and we're a research firm, and we go back and look at history. And I'm going to show my bias, I know, a little bit here. But what we found is that a very interesting statistic going back to the Second World War. When government spending accelerates rapidly, the economy underperforms. It does less than normal growth. When the government cuts spending, I know this is going to sound crazy, when it cuts spending, you get almost double normal levels of economic growth. The government cannot create wealth. It can only create conditions in which wealth is created by individuals, you know, working, you know, inside the economy with their ideas and their hard work and effort. So it hasn't really achieved what they wanted it to achieve, all this stimulus spending and the rest. I won't say that it was completely ineffective, because anytime you're flooding money, it does have some impact. But it didn't recover as quickly, and they've shown over and over again that spending is not the answer. And I know this sounds crazy, but tax cuts work. We went back all the way back to Calvin Coolidge in the early 1900s, and every time they cut taxes, 3 amazing things happened. Number 1, the economy improved. Number 2, the government got more revenues, not less revenues, because the economy improved. And number 3, the wealthy paid a larger share of the overall taxes. So if you really want to punish the wealthy, you cut taxes. It sounds paradoxical, and it is, but even John F. Kennedy said, this is the paradox, if you want to raise government revenues, you cut taxes now. And I know that's not the byword in Washington right now. And what they're going to find with any type of these revenue enhancements is a lot like what happened in England. They raised the tax rate to 50%. They lost almost 2/3 of all the millionaires. They're no longer there. And the amount of revenue they got went down. The people didn't get wealthy by being silly or stupid with their money. And so, you know, and I like to give the example that money is like water. It flows along the path of least resistance. The more resistance you put to success in the United States, the more the money is going to leave. And that's one of the reasons why we have all this business overseas. It's not because people want to take their businesses overseas. They don't. But they go where there's the least resistance to their success. And, you know, I want to see us succeed in states. You know, I may be going on a little bit here, but we did a test of this, looking at the top 10 states for highest taxes and the top 10 states for lowest taxes. And we found 3 amazing things when you looked at that. Those that had the lowest taxes had the best economic growth, they had the best employment growth, and they had the largest increase in revenues to their government. So we know it works at the state level. We've seen it work on the federal level. Unfortunately, the people in Washington have no, you know, vision of this and what the possibilities can be, and they're going to go down a path that will not work. I can almost guarantee it.
You ever think of running for office?
No, never.
That's another show, isn't it? Jason, how about some final thoughts?
I just want to talk about healthcare and what's going on. There's a real big push with healthcare right now. So $6.8 billion, according to the Greater Dayton Area Hospital Association, $6.8 billion is spent on healthcare, hospitals and healthcare. That's more than right, Pat. 32,000 employees. That's a real big deal. 110 North Main downtown, the building is almost full. The PHP Tower, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but PHP is in there, Premier Health Partners, and I think that's fantastic. There's 5,000 people employed at Miami Valley Hospital, and they're buying up a lot of the properties around Miami Valley Hospital for nurses and doctors and staff and whatnot to work there. So I think that's a real important part of the economy locally.
Yes, I can't thank you both enough. It was just an incredibly educational program.
Indeed.
So I thank you both for being on today. We have Barry James, who is CEO of James Investment Research, and we have Jason Antonick, Manager of Economic Development for the Dayton Chamber. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us for Business Connection. Stay tuned now for a message from Phil Parker, President and CEO of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks to the work of a number of chamber leaders and experts, we try each year, early in the new year, to think about the business climate and the economic trends that lay before us. Now that the presidential election is over, economists and others are debating over what lies ahead for 2013. One thing is for certain: not everyone agrees on what the future holds, especially as our federal leaders tackle the looming federal deficit and the fiscal challenges that are both domestic and international. Personally, I'm quite concerned that even if we get a timely fix for this current fiscal cliff, there may be some that don't want it fixed and would rather not compromise, thus risking another recession. That may be okay for the extremists on either end of the political spectrum, but it plays havoc to the businesses and citizens left in the middle who will be negatively affected. One of the tenets I've learned about business is that uncertainty rarely plays a positive role. In times of uncertainty, most will either dig in and try to stabilize, or else they become more conservative and their businesses and home budgets shrink. Even the hardcore risk takers are careful not to overextend themselves. If 2013 grows, it may be modestly. And what we need is some real strong growth, some new investment, and a way to stimulate consumer confidence and job growth. Politics aside, if America is to grow, it needs strong leadership and a plan to jettison this uncertainty we've been under for far too long. Let's not let politics slow or stop the economic growth our nation needs.